They say the darkest secrets are revealed when the rain falls. And that night, the heavens opened wide to expose a betrayal that would shake the walls of a great man's mansion. Chief Damian Okafor, a name that commanded respect, wealth, and fear across the land, thought he had everything, but destiny had other plans. On a stormy night, with thunder splitting the sky, he returned home unexpectedly, only to find two newborn babies abandoned at his gate, crying in the rain. But what will shock you most is who left them there and why. This is not just a story of wealth and betrayal. It is a story of blood, legacy, and a vow forged in the storm. Chief Damian Okafor was not born into wealth or influence. He came from humble beginnings in a small town in Anambra State, Nigeria, where his father was a poor palm wine tapper and his mother a roadside food seller. Life was harsh, but even as a child, Damian stood out. Tall for his age, with sharp eyes that seemed to see opportunities where others only saw hardship, he carried an air of authority that made people listen. From the age of 12, he worked on farms after school, saving coins in a rusted tin. His greatest weapon was determination. While many boys his age dropped out to apprentice and trade, Damian pursued education fiercely, graduating as the best student in his village school. When his father died suddenly, Damian was only 17. He became the breadwinner overnight, taking up menial jobs while still schooling. My dear friends, before we continue, I want to remind you, stories like this are more than entertainment. They are mirrors of life, carrying lessons of hope, faith, and destiny. If this story has touched you so far, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, click the like button, and share it with someone who needs encouragement today. Your support keeps these powerful stories alive, and together we can spread light, wisdom, and healing to many more souls. By sheer grit, he won a scholarship to study business administration at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. There he earned the nickname, the Strategist, because of his uncanny ability to solve problems and see opportunities others missed. After graduation, Damian entered the import and export business, starting with nothing but a borrowed 10,000 naira. He hustled through the markets of Onitsha and Lagos, building networks with traders across borders. Over the years, he expanded into real estate, oil servicing, and agriculture, earning him both wealth and enemies. His resilience and uprightness soon gave him recognition, and he was conferred with the chieftaincy title, Odogwu Ndigbo, the mighty one of the Igbo people. But behind his public success, his private life carried a heavy wound: childlessness. For over 15 years of marriage to his first wife, Damian endured whispers, mockery, and pity. Business rivals mocked him, saying, "A man without a son has no kingdom." Friends turned away, families pressured him to take another wife. Eventually, after years of humiliation, his first marriage collapsed under the strain. Still, Damian held on to faith. He was deeply spiritual, often retreating to prayer camps, sowing seeds and fasting for children. To him, wealth without an heir was emptiness. When he remarried Cynthia, he believed God had finally answered him. So when the twins came, his joy was indescribable, until betrayal shattered it. The rain came that night like it was summoned by the heavens to wash away a terrible sin. Heavy droplets pounded the earth, flooding the narrow streets and drumming against rooftops like 1,000 restless fists. The trees swayed violently in the wind, their branches snapping like brittle bones, while thunder roared across the sky. It was a night no one wanted to step into, a night where only secrets dared to move. Chief Damian Okafor, one of the most respected businessmen in the state, had not planned to return home. He had told his new wife, Cynthia, that he would be away for 3 days on a business trip to Abuja. But as he sat in his hotel room earlier that evening, a strange uneasiness gnawed at him. Something he could not explain pulled at his chest, urging him to return home. Against reason, against his schedule, he packed his bags and took the road back through the storm. When his black SUV rolled into the compound, the headlights sliced through the darkness, and what they revealed nearly stopped his heart. Right there by the front gate, 2 small bundles lay on the cold, wet ground. Rain splattered mercilessly against the frail cloth that barely covered them. He blinked, unsure if his eyes were deceiving him. But then he heard it, A weak, pitiful cry. Then another. His blood froze. Damian threw open the car door, the storm instantly drenching his tailored suit. But he didn't care. His polished shoes sank into the mud as he raced toward the gate. There they were, two tiny babies, newborns, no more than a few days old. Their fragile arms flailed weakly, their lips trembling blue from the cold. Their cries were so faint it broke something inside him. He dropped to his knees, scooping them up with trembling hands. "Jesus! My children!" he cried, his voice breaking with horror. Their skin was icy against his chest, their breaths shallow, their eyes half shut as though the rain had stolen their strength. He pressed them against his chest, covering them with his coat, shielding them from the merciless downpour. His heart pounded like a war drum, fury and confusion clashing within him. Who had done this? Who would abandon such fragile lives in the storm? His eyes snapped toward the house. The lights glowed warmly through the windows, and behind the curtains, shadows moved lazily. His pulse quickened. Inside was warmth, inside was safety, and yet his children had been left outside to die. The realization struck him like lightning. Someone he trusted had orchestrated this cruelty. And there was only one person who had power in that house when he was away. His wife, Cynthia. With urgency burning in his veins, Damian stormed into the house, still clutching the twins against his chest. The marble floor gleamed beneath his dripping shoes, rainwater pooling as he entered. There on the plush sofa sat Cynthia. She was dressed in a silk nightgown, her makeup flawless, her wine glass half filled with red wine. She looked up casually, almost annoyed by his sudden entrance. Completely dry, untouched by the storm raging outside. For a brief moment she froze when she saw the babies in his arms. Her lips parted, her eyes widened, but then she tried to compose herself, lifting her chin defiantly. "Damian, you're back early," she said, her voice trembling slightly but coated with false calmness. The glass slipped in her hand, clinking against the table. Damian's voice thundered across the room, so loud it rattled the windows. "You left my children, our children, in the rain?" His words struck like a whip, raw and burning. The sound made even the maid, who had been dusting quietly in the corner, drop her rag in shock. Cynthia stood slowly, her face stiffening as if to hide her guilt. "Damian, listen. You don't understand. Twins are a curse in my family. My mother warned me. Twins bring poverty. They destroy destinies. I couldn't keep them. I couldn't—" "Silence!" Damian roared, stepping forward. His eyes blazed like fire, veins protruding from his temples. "A curse? These children are blessings. They are answers to years of prayers. Do you know how many nights I cried out to God, begging for a child? Do you know how many insults I endured? How many whispers followed me, saying the great chief Okafor could not father a child? And now God gives me two at once. And you dare to throw them away like trash?" Cynthia's mask of confidence crumbled. She trembled, her lips quivering as tears welled in her eyes. "Damian, I was only afraid. People will laugh. They will say—" "No one will laugh," he snapped, cutting her off. His voice lowered, but the venom in it was even sharper. "They will rejoice because these children are mine. My blood, my legacy. You tried to bury my joy in the rain, Cynthia, but heaven has exposed you tonight." The maid, tears running down her face, rushed forward to help him dry and warm the babies by the fireplace. The twins whimpered softly, slowly regaining their warmth. Damian knelt by them, kissing their tiny foreheads, his tears dripping onto their delicate skin. "You will live," he whispered. "You will grow, and nothing, not even your own mother's cruelty, will take you from me." Cynthia fell to her knees sobbing, but Damian's face was set like stone. He turned to the guards, his voice firm, steady, merciless. "Take her out of my house. From this night, she is no wife of mine. She abandoned my children, therefore she has abandoned her place in this home." The guards hesitated, shocked by the command, but Damian's glare left no room for doubt. They seized Cynthia by the arms. She screamed, fought, begged. "Damian, please, forgive me. Don't do this. Don't shame me like this." Her cries echoed through the mansion, but Damian did not flinch. They dragged her to the very gate where she had left the twins, her silk gown soaking in the rain as the thunder cracked above. The same storm she had condemned her babies to now swallowed her whole. The gate slammed shut behind her, her screams fading into the night. Inside, silence reigned once more, broken only by the soft cries of the twins. Damian returned to them, his heart torn but resolute. He sat by the fire, holding them close. "From this night you are my reason to breathe," he whispered. "I will raise you with love, with protection, with everything I have." That night the storm continued, as though the heavens wept for the cruelty of a mother. But the fire inside Damian's home burned steady, wrapping his children in warmth, in life, in promise. And though the world outside was dark, inside those walls, a father's vow had been born, unshakable, unbreakable, eternal. The following morning, when the storm had finally settled, the compound carried an eerie silence. The rainwater had carved gullies across the ground, and the gate was smeared with mud from the struggle the night before. But inside the mansion, Damian sat in a rocking chair by the fire, still cradling his twins. He hadn't slept. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the sight of them lying helpless in the rain, and his chest tightened with fury and grief. Word spread quickly. In the village, tongues wagged and whispers grew into murmurs. The story of Chief Okafor's new wife abandoning her newborn twins traveled like wildfire. Some cursed Cynthia's name, calling her wicked and heartless. Others shook their heads in disbelief. How could a mother carry life for 9 months only to discard it in a storm? Yet for many, the scandal only deepened their respect for Damian, for standing firm as a father who chose his children above all else. Cynthia, meanwhile, wandered the streets drenched in shame. Relatives refused to take her in, friends shut their doors against her, and even strangers spat when she passed. "Wicked woman," they called her. "God will judge you." Her once flawless beauty seemed to fade with every passing day, her gowns torn by mud, her perfume washed away by the stench of rejection. She had thought wealth and reputation would shield her, but now she was nothing more than a beggar under the very storm she had created. Back in the mansion, Damian gathered his household together, the maids, the guards, the cook, everyone who had witnessed the events of the night before. He stood tall, his voice carrying both authority and pain. "Let this house never forget," he declared, "that these children are the true heirs of this family. Anyone who dares to harm them, abandon them, or speak against them will have me to answer to. These twins are not a curse. They are my blessing, my joy, my tomorrow." The household bowed their heads, some weeping silently, for they too had seen the fragility of those tiny lives in the rain, and they knew that without Damian's return, the story might have ended in tragedy. From that day, everyone in the house treated the twins with reverence, as though the hand of God himself had placed them there. Days turned into weeks, and the twins grew stronger. Their cries became louder, their eyes brighter, their tiny fists gripping their father's fingers with surprising strength. Damian named them Chisum and Chizoba. God is with me, and God saves. To him, their names were a constant reminder that their survival was no accident, but a divine intervention. He poured his love into them endlessly. Mornings found him carrying them into the garden, showing them the flowers glistening with dew. Evenings found him rocking them gently by the fire, humming lullabies he hadn't sung since childhood. Business partners marveled at how Chief Okafor, once known for his relentless pursuit of wealth, now canceled meetings just to spend time with his children. But not everyone rejoiced. Cynthia's mother, a bitter woman named Madame Gloria, felt humiliated by the scandal. She visited Damian weeks later, her face hardened by pride. "You have disgraced my daughter," she spat. "You threw her out like a dog. Twins are not blessings, they are trouble. You should have let her end them before misfortune follows you." Damian's eyes darkened with fury as he rose to his full height. "Get out of my house," he said coldly. "Your daughter almost murdered my children, and you dare come here to defend her evil? If curses exist, they live in the hearts of women like you. But my children will rise. They will live long, prosper, and prove you wrong." His voice was so sharp that Madame Gloria stumbled back, muttering curses as she stormed away. Years passed. Chisholm and Chizoba grew into strong, brilliant children. Chisholm, the boy, carried his father's sharp mind and leadership. Chizoba, the girl, had his courage and compassion. Together they filled the mansion with laughter, their footsteps echoing down the halls like music. Wherever they went, people marveled at how radiant they were. Children who had once been left for dead now shone like stars in the sky. Damian never let them forget the truth of their beginning, though he shielded them from the pain of it until they were old enough to understand. "You are miracles," he would tell them as they sat by the fire. "Never forget that you were chosen by God himself to live. Do not waste your lives. Shine so bright that even those who once called you a curse will bow before your light." Meanwhile, Cynthia lived in shadows. She drifted from town to town, begging for food, rejected by all who knew her story. The beauty she once flaunted was gone, her skin roughened by sun, her body thinned by hunger. And yet bitterness clung to her like a parasite. She blamed everyone but herself, her mother for filling her head with superstition, Damian for exposing her shame, and the twins for daring to live when she wanted them gone. One day, more than a decade later, Cynthia heard the sound of drums and celebration in the village square. Curious, she followed the crowd and saw a sight that made her knees buckle. It was Chisholm and Chizoba, now teenagers, being honored in a public ceremony for their academic excellence. Chisholm had won a National Science Award, while Chizoba had been recognized for her leadership in charity work. The entire town gathered to celebrate them, showering them with gifts and praise. Cynthia hid among the crowd, her tattered clothes sticking out against the sea of colorful attire. Tears stung her eyes, not of joy but of envy and regret. Those were her children, the same children she had abandoned in the rain, the same children she had tried to erase, and now the world hailed them as blessings. The irony burned her soul like fire. Unable to resist, she approached them after the ceremony, her voice trembling. "Chisholm, Chizoba, I am your mother." The twins froze, confusion clouding their young faces. But before they could respond, Damian stepped forward, his hand protective on their shoulders. "You lost the right to call yourself their mother the night you left them to die," he said, his voice steady but laced with anger. "These children owe you nothing. They have grown in love, in care, in faith, things you could never give them." Cynthia fell to her knees in the dust, clutching at Damian's trousers. "Please, forgive me. Let me see them. Let me hold them. Just once. I have nothing, Damian. I am nothing without them. Give me a chance to make things right." But Damian's face hardened. The crowd that had gathered murmured, some pitying her, others cursing her once more. He looked down at her with finality. "You chose your path the night you left them in the storm. Tonight you face the storm alone." His words cut like a blade, leaving her weeping in the dirt. The twins, though shaken, turned away with him, their steps firm beside their father. They did not look back, for they knew deep down that the woman crying in the dust was not the mother who had raised them, but a stranger whose cruelty had almost stolen their lives. As the years rolled on, Chisholm and Chizoba fulfilled every promise their father had seen in them. Chisholm became an engineer, designing projects that brought light and water to rural villages. Chizoba became a lawyer, defending the weak and fighting against injustices. Together, they carried the name of Okafor with pride, turning it into a legacy of honor. On the day Damian grew old and gray, surrounded by family and well-wishers, he held his twins, now grown adults, close and whispered his final words of pride. "The rain that almost took you gave me the fire to live. Never forget who you are. Never forget where you came from." When he passed peacefully in his sleep, the entire village mourned him, but none more than Chisholm and Chizoba, who vowed to continue the path their father had carved with love and sacrifice. And so, the story of the twins who were abandoned in the rain became a tale passed down through generations, a story of betrayal, redemption, and the power of a father's love. A reminder that what some call a curse may very well be the greatest blessing of all. After Damian's funeral, the mansion was filled with mourners from every corner of the state. Business leaders, politicians, neighbors, and villagers came to pay respect to the man who had stood like a lion for his children. The twins, now adults, stood tall and dignified by the casket, receiving condolences. Many whispered blessings over them, remembering how they had once been left to die, but now stood as symbols of survival and grace. That night, after the mourners had gone, Chisholm and Chisoba sat together in their father's study, surrounded by his books, awards, and the scent of the pipe tobacco he used to smoke. The fire flickered softly, and silence hung heavy between them until Chisoba spoke. "Brother, sometimes I think about her, about the woman who birthed us. Do you ever wonder if she still lives?" Chisholm's jaw tightened. He stared into the flames. "She made her choice, Zoba. Father gave her a chance, and she threw it away. If she lives, it is with the weight of her shame. And if she is gone, then may God judge her soul. But she is no mother of ours." His voice carried bitterness, yet beneath it lingered a trace of sorrow. Unknown to them, Cynthia was indeed still alive, but only barely. She lived on the edge of the city, scavenging scraps from the market, her hair matted, her skin leathery from the sun. Her once velvet voice had grown hoarse from begging. The villagers who recognized her would sometimes point and whisper, "That's the woman who abandoned her twins." Children laughed at her, merchants chased her away, and she had become a ghost of her former self. One fateful evening, Cynthia stumbled into the village square, weak from hunger. She collapsed near the well, clutching her chest. People gathered, but no one dared to touch her. "Leave her," someone muttered. "She is cursed." Another spat in her direction. "Let her rot." Only an old widow knelt beside her, giving her a sip of water. With her last strength, Cynthia whispered, "My children, my twins, forgive me." And with that, she breathed her last. News of her death eventually reached Chisholm and Chisoba. They stood in silence as the messenger delivered the story. For a long while, neither spoke. Then Chisoba, tears welling in her eyes, whispered, "She was wicked, yes, but still, she was the one who carried us." Chisholm clenched his fists but finally nodded. "Then we will not spit on her memory, but neither will we glorify her. We will lay her to rest quietly." That is all. They arranged for a simple burial, attended by only themselves and a few church elders. There were no grand speeches, no songs of praise, just a silent prayer that God might have mercy on her soul. As they placed her into the ground, Chisoba whispered softly, "We forgive you, but we will never forget." From then on, the twins poured even more of themselves into their community. Chisholm expanded his engineering company, building roads and hospitals in rural areas. Chisoba became a voice for abandoned children, using her law firm to fight for the rights of the voiceless. Every step they took, every battle they won, was in honor of the father who had saved them, and as a defiance to the darkness that had almost ended their story. Villagers began to tell their tale like a folktale. Around fires at night, old men would say, "Have you heard the story of the twins abandoned in the rain? Their mother called them a curse, but today they are blessings to us all." Mothers would draw their children close, warning them against selfishness and cruelty, teaching them that love and patience always birth greatness. The mansion became more than a home. It became a refuge. Orphans were taken in, widows were supported, and students were given scholarships in the name of Chief Damian Okafor. His legacy lived on through his twins, who never forgot the vow he made the stormy night to protect and cherish them no matter the cost. Years later, when Chisholm married and had his own children, he would often pause by the gate of the mansion, staring at the spot where he had once been left to die. His eyes would soften, and he would whisper to his children, "Here is where my story began. Never despise humble beginnings, for even in the mud, greatness can grow." Chisoba, too, when she held her first daughter, wept uncontrollably. Her husband, confused, asked why she cried. She smiled through her tears and said, "Because once I was not wanted, but now I will make sure every child I touch through my work knows they are wanted, they are loved." The memory of Cynthia never completely faded, but it became a shadow rather than a wound. The twins did not let bitterness rule them. Instead, they turned pain into purpose, rejection into resilience. They understood that sometimes the ones meant to love you the most may fail you, but God always raises another hand to protect. For them, that hand had been their father. And so when people asked them about their lives, they always began not with their mother's betrayal, but with their father's love. We were saved by him, they would say proudly. He stood in the storm for us. Their eyes would shine with gratitude, and those who listened would be moved to tears. Over time, the story of the twins spread beyond the village, beyond the state, even beyond the country. Journalists wrote articles, filmmakers approached them, churches used their lives as sermons. Their story became a testimony of endurance, of love conquering hate, of blessings rising from what was once called a curse. One rainy evening, many years later, Chisholm and Chisoba stood together on the balcony of the mansion, watching the storm rage across the horizon. The thunder reminded them of the night they were almost taken. The rain reminded them of the night they were saved. Strange, Chisoba said softly, how the same rain that almost killed us also revealed Father's love. Chisholm nodded, his hand resting on the railing. Rain will always come. Storms will always come. But it is not the storm that decides our destiny. It is who stands with us through it. And Father stood, his words carried weight, echoing like prophecy into the night. And thus the tale of the twins who had once been abandoned in the rain became eternal. A story told not with sorrow but with triumph. A story passed down from fathers to sons, from mothers to daughters. A story that proved that no darkness is stronger than love, no betrayal deeper than grace, and no storm more powerful than the vow of a parent who chooses to protect. For in the end, the rain that sought to destroy them only watered the seeds of greatness, and the world forever would remember Chisholm and Chisoba, not as cursed children, but as living testaments to the truth that every child is a blessing. After their father's passing, the Okafor estate drew not only admiration, but also envy. Relatives who had once distanced themselves during Cynthia's scandal now crawled out of the shadows, demanding a share of Damian's wealth. Cousins whispered that Chisholm and Chisoba were too young to manage such an empire, while uncles schemed to wrest control of the family businesses. The same family that had mocked their existence now fought bitterly to feast on their inheritance. Chisholm, wise beyond his years, stood before them in the mansion's great hall. His voice was firm, his eyes sharp. Our father built this empire with sweat and sacrifice. None of you stood with him when he was mocked for being childless. None of you held us when we were left to die in the rain. You have no share in what you did not protect. The hall fell silent, and one by one the schemers lowered their eyes, shamed into retreat. But not everyone surrendered quietly. A cousin named Kenneth, greedy and ambitious, filed a lawsuit against them, claiming that the twins had no legitimate right to Damian's fortune since their mother had abandoned them. His words cut deep, reopening wounds the twins thought had healed. The case became the talk of the town, newspapers splashing headlines that dragged their mother's shame back into the light. Chisoba, now a seasoned lawyer, chose to defend their father's legacy herself. In the courtroom, she stood tall in her black gown, her voice clear as a bell. These children were abandoned, yes, but not by their father. Chief Damian Okafor claimed them, raised them, loved them, and gave them his name. To deny their right to his inheritance is to deny the blood that flows in their veins. Her arguments shook the courtroom. Witnesses, including old household staff, testified to how Damian had fought for his children, how he had expelled Cynthia to save them, how he had dedicated his life to their survival. The judge, moved by the testimony, slammed his gavel and ruled in favor of the twins. Kenneth stormed out, humiliated, while the crowd erupted in applause for Chisoba's victory. The case not only secured their inheritance, but also strengthened their bond as siblings. Chisholm clasped her hand outside the courthouse, pride shining in his eyes. You have father's fire, he told her. She smiled through tears. And you have his strength. Together we are unstoppable, but life was not done testing them. Years later, Chisholm faced betrayal from within his own company. A trusted business partner embezzled funds meant for a hospital project, leaving him facing public shame. Critics jeered, claiming the boy who was once abandoned in the rain had finally failed. Rumors spread that the twins' success was built on luck, not wisdom. Chisholm fell into despair, locking himself away for days. It was Chisoba who found him, sitting in their father's old study, staring at the fire. She placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered, "Brother, remember the rain. If we could survive death itself, we can survive this storm. Stand, fight. Do not let them write our story for us." Her words reignited his resolve. Chisholm exposed the corrupt partner, reclaimed his company's honor, and finished the hospital project, dedicating it to Damian's memory. At the grand opening, he declared, "This building is not only for healing bodies, it is for healing legacies, for proving that no matter where you begin, you can rise." The crowd roared, his name carried high once more. Meanwhile, Chizoba took her mission beyond the courtroom. She founded an organization for abandoned children, building shelters across the state. Each shelter bore the name, the Rain's Refuge, a symbol of survival. When asked why she chose that name, she would smile softly and reply, "Because even in the rain, life can begin anew." The shelters transformed lives. Children once thrown away found education, love, and belonging. Widows who had been left with nothing found work and dignity. People began to call Chisoba the mother of the forgotten. Her name spread far and wide, inspiring others to create similar havens across the nation. But one final twist awaited the twins. On the 20th anniversary of their survival, a filmmaker approached them, seeking to turn their story into a movie. At first they hesitated. Did they really want the world to relive their pain? But after much thought, they agreed. "If our story can save even one child, then it must be told," Chisholm said. The film, titled Abandoned in the Rain, became a global success. Audiences wept as they watched the dramatization of Damian discovering his babies outside in the storm. People cheered at the courtroom victories, gasped at the betrayals, and rejoiced at the triumphs. The twins' story became more than history. It became legend. Invitations poured in from international platforms. Chisholm spoke at global conferences on leadership and resilience, while Chizoba addressed the United Nations about child rights. Their voices carried far beyond their village, turning their once painful beginning into a beacon of hope for millions. One evening, after returning from a conference in Geneva, the twins sat together once more on the mansion balcony. The rain was falling, soft and steady, kissing the earth with gentle rhythm. Chizoba sighed, resting her head on her brother's shoulder. "Strange how rain used to mean death for us, but now it feels like a blessing." Chisholm nodded, watching the droplets streak across the railing. "Because Father taught us never to fear storms. He showed us that storms only reveal who truly stands for you." His words hung in the air, carried by the wind like a prayer. They sat in silence for a long while, letting the rain wash over the memory of their past. In that moment, they understood fully that their lives had come full circle. The rain that once threatened to end them had instead birthed a legacy that would outlive them. When they eventually had grandchildren of their own, they told the story again and again. "We were once abandoned in the rain, but God sent our Father to save us. Never let anyone tell you that you are a curse. You are a blessing. You are proof that storms can create strength." Their grandchildren listened wide-eyed, hearts swelling with pride. And so the tale endured, etched into history, whispered into lullabies, carved into the hearts of all who heard it. A story that began with cruelty but ended with triumph. A story of betrayal, survival, and redemption. A story that proved beyond doubt that no matter how dark the storm, love can light the way.